I am Evelyn Reed, the eldest, legitimate daughter of the Grand Preceptor's residence, yet I was the one who never received favor. From childhood, I had been taught to conduct myself with dignity and propriety, to serve as an exemplar for my younger brothers and sisters. However, my betrothed Edmund was stolen away by my seemingly innocent and charming legitimate sister, Celeste. My brothers remembered not a single kindness I had shown them, only harboring resentment for my strict supervision over them. Even our parents regarded me merely as an ornament to grace the family's reputation, wholeheartedly favoring Celeste instead. Faced with such circumstances, I threw up my hands and thoroughly gave up trying. From then on, I no longer involved myself in any household affairs, allowing them to exhaust themselves in their petty squabbles, gradually falling apart, no longer resembling the warm family of days past. Even that seemingly innocent and charming Celeste, after losing my support, ceased to be their precious darling. The early summer sun shone warmly, yet I felt nothing but a bone-deep chill. The reason was my legitimate sister Celeste, who was currently nestled in our parents' embrace, weeping and clamoring to marry my betrothed. Those tearful sobs nearly broke our parents' hearts. Kneeling nearby was my betrothed, Edmund Shaw. His back was ramrod straight, and when he gazed at Celeste, his eyes were filled with tender affection like flowing water. Never in my life have I encountered a woman as innocent and captivating as Celeste. In this lifetime, I wish only to acknowledge her as my worthy match. I humbly beseech Miss Evelyn to grant us this favor." Upon hearing these words, Celeste wept even more fiercely, sobbing intermittently with the same few phrases that she had wronged me. But she and Edmund truly loved each other, and she begged me to fulfill their wishes. It made me appear as though I were the villain preventing their union. Seeing this, Mother Lady Catherine's eyes overflowed with heartache. She quickly turned to me, offering what seemed like a way out, though her gaze carried a subtle warning. "Evelyn, since you are the elder sister, you must learn to be magnanimous toward your younger sister. Since Edmund truly cherishes Celeste, you should consider your engagement as if it never existed." All eyes in the room suddenly focused on me. My hands beneath my sleeves clenched into fists, and it took me quite some time to take a deep breath and calm myself before addressing them. "As you wish." Father Aldrich's expression immediately darkened, and he sternly rebuked me. "Evelyn Reed, is this the manner in which you speak to your parents?" Upon seeing this, Celeste suddenly displayed a tragic smile. "Father, mother, sister must surely blame me. I cannot disregard sister's feelings. In this life, I can only remain fated to be apart from Edmund." Edmund, witnessing this scene, immediately grew anxious and changed his expression, looking at me with added resentment. "Miss Evelyn and I have never shared any affection. Even if we were forcibly matched, we would only become resentful spouses. Why will the young lady not show mercy?" Watching their performance, I found it utterly ridiculous. Had I not been a light sleeper last night and come to the central courtyard for a walk, overhearing Celeste conspiring with my brothers in the hall to have Edmund personally pressure me, I might have truly believed she felt any guilt. I ignored her and walked directly toward the front gate, brushing past them. Just as I managed to open the courtyard gate a crack, my biased father called me to halt. When I turned back, my face was already streaked with tears, and my voice had changed to a sobbing tone. Since my younger sister has already overstepped me, her legitimate elder sister, and pledged herself to Master Edmund, what was meant to happen has already happened. Father and mother tell me to yield, and I have already yielded. What more do you want me to do? My wailing was quite loud, with every indication that I might sob myself into unconsciousness. Mother, seeing this, felt it was inappropriate and wanted to approach to offer false comfort and silence me. She didn't expect me to lean back and bump open the main gate. Outside stood several young ladies from the most influential families in the capital, watching in stunned amazement. The leader among them was a renowned gossip expert. Early this morning, I had sent them invitations claiming that the lotus flowers in my courtyard had bloomed and inviting them to come and admire them. At this moment, all the scandals in my courtyard were laid bare before them. These noble ladies' eyes gleamed with excitement. Celeste, who had just been weeping as though her life depended on it, now truly looked ready to faint. But I beat her to it, flashing a tragic smile at the crowd of ladies outside before turning and collapsing into my maid Rose's arms. In the past, I had cared about the Grand Preceptor's residence's reputation. No matter how much trouble Celeste caused, I would find ways to cover for her, but my ability to clean up after her couldn't keep pace with the speed at which she created chaos. Until this incident, she thought that by acting spoiled in our parents' arms and pressuring me a little, I would once again swallow all the bitter consequences as before, taking all the blame upon myself to preserve everyone else's reputation in the household. She never considered that this time I had seen the light. This Grand Preceptor's residence had rotted to such a degree that I alone couldn't save it. If it was going to rot, then everyone could rot together. Before it completely putrefied, I would extricate myself first. Soon, news of Celeste stealing her elder sister's betrothed spread throughout the capital, especially since my words that day had been deliberately ambiguous. I had only said that everything that should have happened between her and Edmund had already happened, without specifying exactly what aspects I meant. Now, when Celeste went out to attend banquets, people looked at her with suggestive glances. The noble ladies of the capital were also unwilling to sit near her, fearing it would damage their own reputations. When Celeste was mistreated outside, she would return home to cry to Mother. Naturally, Mother would be angry and come to hold me accountable. When people from her courtyard came to summon me, I initially refused to go. Only when she used the hierarchy of age and status to force me did I finally paint on a pitiful, tragic appearance and slowly make my way over. Upon entering, I first greeted Mother, but before I could finish a single sentence, I collapsed in a faint. This startled Mother instead, and she asked Rose, who was supporting me, what had happened. I only felt Rose mercilessly pinch my thigh. Then she began her tearful account. Miss has been devastated since the last incident and has injured her health. These past few days, she's been in a daze, talking nonsense more than she's been lucid. In her dreams, she constantly calls for Madam, and when she awakens to find Madam absent, she becomes despondent and collapses again. Today, upon hearing Madam's summons, Miss couldn't even walk properly, but refused to call for a sedan chair, choosing to walk here on foot to pay her respects to Madam. These words were particularly moving. When Rose finished explaining that I had fainted upon entering due to overexertion from walking, Mother had nothing more to say. After a few expressions of concern, she had Rose escort me back. This incident somehow leaked out, and afterward, whenever Celeste attended gatherings, she invariably faced sardonic remarks from others. They said that I had been so devastated by her actions that I was bedridden, yet this was still being concealed. Meanwhile, Celeste spent her days gadding about, and when she faced criticism, she would come back to blame me. When this gossip reached Father's ears, Celeste was rarely confined to the residence for once. She harbored considerable resentment and wanted to settle accounts with me. No sooner had she appeared before me than her eyes were already red, and she immediately moved to kneel. I allowed her to kneel for quite some time before supporting myself on Rose's hand to sit up tremblingly. First, I lost my wits and mistakenly hurled the medicine brazier from my bedside toward her. Celeste couldn't dodge in time and was splashed with ash. Before she could cry out, she saw me pointing at the jade pendant at her waist with trembling hands. This is... you and Edmund? Before I could finish, my eyes rolled back and I fainted. When Rose came to support me, she discreetly punctured the cattle bladder filled with chicken blood that I kept under my pillow. Immediately, she screamed and ran outside. On her way, she encountered the very noble ladies who had visited the residence the previous day. Rose, covered in blood and looking utterly wretched, told them about how the younger miss had come to see me wearing Master Edmund's token, which had so stimulated me that I vomited blood. Those noble ladies, having heard their fill of gossip, departed with satisfied expressions. That evening, when father returned home, he intended to sell Rose. I dragged my ailing body to him, curtsied, and immediately coughed up blood 3 times. I simply said that if father intended to sell Rose, he might as well dispose of me as well. In his fury, father looked at me with newfound scrutiny. "Evelyn," he said, "you used to be the person most concerned with our family's reputation." Indeed, when I first came to the capital with father as a child, he had just established his footing in court. Mother daily warned me to be cautious in word and deed, saying that father's position made reputation paramount. Reputation could cost a person their life. Though I understood only dimly, I didn't want anything to happen to father. Therefore, upon entering the capital, I became even more careful and meticulous in my behavior, more beyond reproach than even those noble ladies who had lived in the capital all their lives. Thus, the Grand Preceptor's reputation became like a sword hanging over my head, making me cautious day after day, binding my hands and feet, making life increasingly tedious day by day. At this moment, I looked up at father, not concealing the exhaustion in my eyes. "Your daughter has been meticulous all her life, afraid of bringing shame to father, never daring to speak or act rashly. Now that the lamp oil is exhausted, I only wish to have a few old friends by my side." Father remained silent for a while before finally speaking. "What nonsense! You're still very young." I smiled bitterly and made no comment. He eventually swept his sleeves and departed without punishing Rose. Late that night, Rose and I huddled under covers, reading storybooks and laughing quietly while lying on the couch. When asked about it, we called it staying up late. How else could one maintain a sickly, haggard appearance without staying up all night? However, my illness couldn't continue to be as severe as before. I needed to gradually recover. Since I had attracted father's attention, if I remained seriously ill, he might summon imperial physicians from the palace. Once they weren't my own people, the pretense would become difficult to maintain. I planned to slowly improve in the coming days, but not to recover completely. Otherwise, all the troublesome old and young members of the Grand Preceptor's household would once again become my responsibility. Celeste was soon released from confinement, though she was still told not to make public appearances at banquets. Resting my chin on my hand, I listened to Rose's reports and thought that my parents were still too trusting of their precious daughter. Since Celeste couldn't go out to cause trouble, she would inevitably turn to tormenting their precious sons, my dear younger brothers. These were all good-for-nothing wastrels. When Celeste gathered with them, they had caused quite a few scandalous incidents. Previously, I had managed them, and though barely maintaining a facade of peace, it had earned me their resentment. Now that I no longer interfered, I was curious to see what kind of spectacle they could create. Sure enough, just 4 days later, commotion arose from the front courtyard. The maid of my second brother Julian came crying and knocking at my courtyard gate. "Eldest miss, please go quickly and save second young master. Master is about to beat him to death." Rose, Lily, Sophie, and I were playing Pai Gow when she was allowed to cry outside for quite some time before I sent Rose to respond. Our miss is unwell and has finally managed to rest. How dare you make such a racket here? But, young master— Before the maid could finish, Rose slammed the door shut with a bang, coldly replying through the door, "Our miss says to come back when he's actually dead." Julian's maid was usually quite clever, but seeing Julian close to Celeste, with Julian confiding everything to Celeste's side, she only thought of me when Julian got into trouble and they needed someone to face father's wrath and take the blame. Sitting in my room, listening to the commotion outside, I couldn't suppress a cold smile. If I gave in to her crying and went now, I would be the one crying later. This scenario had played out too many times, to the point where I knew exactly what would happen if I went. Father would be in a towering rage, but reluctant to truly harm his precious son. The women in the room wouldn't dare speak up to protect him, waiting for me to arrive so Mother and Celeste could push me forward like a savior. Father's anger would then conveniently find an outlet. At best, I'd receive slaps that would leave my cheeks swollen for half a month, preventing me from going out. At worst, I'd face the disciplinary rod, beaten until my skin split and flesh tore, all because I had failed to properly educate my brother. After Father had vented his fury, when it came time to punish Julian, it would be a painless sentence of kneeling in the ancestral hall for 2 days. Initially, Julian would feel guilty about my injuries, but after Celeste secretly brought him food to the ancestral hall a few times and whispered in his ear about how I bad-mouthed Julian behind his back, calling him incompetent and a burden, he would doubly resent me. Elder sister manages the household for Mother and had no choice but to shield you this time. It's natural for her to resent you for bringing her trouble, Celeste would say lightly, turning my protection of Julian into resentment with just a few words. Then, with tears in her eyes, she would look up at the brother who towered over her with apparent concern. "Second brother, you frightened me so much then. I had already resolved that if Father intended to beat you, I would risk my life to shield you. I never expected elder sister to act first. I'm truly useless. You won't blame me for this, will you?" "No," Julian would answer decisively. "I'm not stupid. I can see who truly cares for me. How could I bear to blame you?" With such words, the scene would become one of harmonious sibling affection. I had once stood behind the curtains, contemplating the basket of pastries in my hand, then given it to Rose before turning to leave. Recalling this past incident now, I felt a particular sense of anticipation. Back then, Celeste had sworn so resoundingly that she would shield Julian even at the cost of her life, frustrated only that I, the villain, kept stealing her thunder. Now that this villain wasn't appearing on scene, I wondered if Celeste would truly fulfill her oath as promised, ready to die rather than fail to protect Julian. The answer was no. By the next day, when I slept until the sun was high overhead, I opened my eyes to find Rose's face eager to share gossip with me. She told me that Julian had nearly been beaten lame by Father and was now half dead in his own courtyard. Celeste wasn't much better off. This incident had been caused by her. Bored and restless, she had actually convinced Julian to take her to visit a pleasure house. Their conduct had been particularly conspicuous, leading to their recognition. The sight of a pair of the Grand Preceptor's children frequenting houses of ill repute in broad daylight provided perfect ammunition for someone to severely impeach Father. Father, who valued his reputation above all else, was naturally furious. However, retaining a shred of reason, he questioned both of them before administering family discipline. Celeste, facing Father's wrath directly for the first time, was completely terrified and kept pushing all the blame onto Julian. Julian received a near-fatal beating. According to my friend who works in the front courtyard, the look second young master gave Miss Celeste at that moment was truly unforgettable, Rose said excitedly, her cheeks flushed red with satisfaction. I merely smiled at this without comment. After all these years of beatings, Father had finally directed his authority toward his precious children for once. I wondered how he would feel about it afterward. But this was no concern of mine. I had given up trying, so let them create chaos as they pleased. Even if they turned the sky upside down, it wouldn't disturb my peace. Julian's incident had barely passed when trouble arose in the household again. My third brother, Nathaniel, who should have been attending the Imperial Academy, was one day escorted home by officers. The reason was that he had gotten into an argument with someone at school and, in his fury, resorted to violence. If it had been an ordinary scuffle, that would have been one thing. But he had formed cliques at school, and when others saw him fighting, they joined in as well. Dozens of students beat one person, severely injuring him and leaving him unconscious to this day. The victim was also from an official family, with his father serving in the Ministry of Personnel. With a few connections, they arranged to have Nathaniel imprisoned. The Reed family claimed to be among the clean officials, and if Nathaniel intended to pursue an official career, he would need to follow the same path as Father. Imprisonment would destroy most of his future prospects. Father was still at court, leaving Mother in charge of the household. Upon hearing the officer's account, she wept as though her heart would break, completely losing the composure expected of a noblewoman, desperately clinging to Nathaniel's arm to prevent the officers from taking him away. The officers feigned difficulty for a while before speaking with apparent reluctance. It might be possible to temporarily bail him out, but the ransom money would likely be... Seeing this, Mother feared they might change their minds and quickly called for the accountant to fetch money from the vault. The accountant soon returned, but what should have been a chest of silver ingots requiring 2 men to carry had become a small box that could be held in one's hands. Mother was furious and immediately berated him for his incompetence. However, after receiving the account books, her face turned ashen with shock. It turned out that after I had fallen ill half a month ago, I had conspicuously returned the authority to manage the accounts to Mother. Rose and Lily, carrying the account books, had deliberately taken a circuitous route through most of the Grand Preceptor's residence, naturally allowing Celeste to learn of this matter. From then on, she went to Mother's place daily to pester her. Sometimes she wanted money allocated for buying clothes. Other times, she wanted to compete with princesses and county princesses in bidding for jewelry. Mother, having been away from such matters for years, didn't know how meager the household savings had become. Indulging her love for Celeste, she gave her whatever she requested. It wasn't until now, when Nathaniel was about to be imprisoned and the household couldn't even scrape together his bail money, that she realized the truth. Those sums of silver had been transformed into Celeste's magnificent array of colorful ornaments. After Nathaniel was taken away, Celeste appeared at the gate in exactly this manner, wearing the step-shaker she had won at auction from the Pearl and Jade Pavilion for 500 taels of silver, bouncing and skipping about. She had no idea that her brother was about to have his future completely ruined over those same 500 taels. Celeste even proudly showed off in front of Mother, sweetly hugging Mother's arm and asking coquettishly if it looked good. Mother stared at the brilliant step-shaker with reddened eyes. After asking Celeste about the price, she tried to drag Celeste to return it for the money. Naturally, Celeste refused desperately, crying and shouting that when I had managed the accounts, it was bad enough that I had skimped on her attire. How could Mother now also become so heartless? Mother's temper flared at that moment, her pointing finger trembling as she spoke. You used to slander your legitimate sister for skimping on you, but now I finally understand. This wasn't skimping at all, but rather your own profligate spending, which you blamed on your sister. Come with me now to return this jewelry." Mother's attitude was resolute. Under normal circumstances, Celeste would have yielded. But she had already boasted several days ago that at the palace banquet 10 days hence, she would outshine her nemesis Ophelia and thoroughly trample her underfoot. She had just enjoyed the satisfaction of seizing a treasure from her rival's hands. Asking her to return it now would be tantamount to grinding her face under someone's heel. Celeste refused to go, while Mother insisted she must. During their dispute, Celeste suddenly let out a wailing cry and rushed toward the nearby pond, declaring that if forced to return the step-shaker, she would rather die. Celeste was ultimately stopped by the nanny from Mother's side, but Mother had lost all strength to continue arguing with her. She sat there dejectedly, looking at the pair of children she loved like her own heart, her face and heart filled with bewilderment. Rose, fearing that verbal relay wouldn't adequately convey the drama, specifically had Lily accompany her in reenacting it several times. When she still couldn't make me laugh, she dampened her enthusiasm and looked at me cautiously. "If Miss doesn't enjoy hearing these things, this servant won't tell them anymore." "It's fine. I need to know what's happening in the front courtyard to prevent unexpected situations." I leaned against the table, casually picking up a fan to prop my head. "They are my relatives after all. Not laughing at them preserves what little virtue I have left. Restraining myself from laughter, may Buddha forgive me." Nathaniel ultimately wasn't imprisoned. Father's connections in court helped smooth things over, and Nathaniel was sent back after 2 hours. However, Father now owed a substantial favor, and since he wouldn't even produce 500 taels to smooth things over after his children beat someone else's son, the Ministry of Personnel official felt Father was bullying him excessively and now held a deep grudge against Father. Father's previous strategy of maintaining neutrality would now be difficult to sustain. By the time Celeste learned the severity of the situation and understood that she had caused enormous trouble, she was terrified to the point of pallor. She quickly sent a maid out and managed to return the step-shaker before Nathaniel and Father returned home. That evening, when she appeared before Father and Nathaniel, she was dressed in plain clothes. Her usually charming face now bore no cosmetics, with only her tear-stained, reddened eyes standing out vividly. Upon seeing Father, Celeste immediately knelt down, pressing her forehead to the cold floor tiles, her voice particularly pitiful. Celeste knows she has committed a grave error, nearly ruining Brother's future. "From now on, I shall wear only plain clothing and forego all adornment, so that I may constantly remember today's mistake and atone to Brother and Father." This performance considerably cooled Father's anger. After all, Celeste wasn't completely beyond redemption. However, Nathaniel's expression remained poor. He was still seething from nearly being imprisoned and merely swept his sleeves in response to Celeste's apology, making no reply whatsoever. Celeste had escaped disaster, but her monthly allowance for the next 6 months was cancelled. This wasn't really a hardship for her. If she had no silver, Edmund did. As long as she concocted more lies about being mistreated in the residence and shed a few tears into her handkerchief before Edmund, he would empty his own household to ensure his Celeste could continue using silk bedding and eating delicacies, remaining the most innocent and carefree girl in the world. As for what Edmund's grandmother thought about Celeste so brazenly spending Edmund's money before they were even married, I had no way of knowing. But these were matters for another day. That very night, Eleanor Mama from Mother's courtyard knocked on my gate, saying Mother's headache had flared up, she couldn't sleep in the night, and wished to see me. I loudly told Rose to quickly invite Eleanor Mama in, but in saying these few words, I had coughed 5 times and vomited blood twice. Eleanor Mama opened the door to see me in a single robe, supporting myself against the doorframe while coughing up blood. The plain handkerchief in my hand was already stained red over most of its surface, with blood drops falling from one corner. Eleanor Mama opened and closed her mouth several times, unable to speak, and finally left in dejection. I didn't go to see Mother, but she began worrying about me instead. The next day, she had someone pack various tonics and came with a grand procession of maids and servants. She wanted to see me, but I was unconscious and didn't want to see her. Having grown accustomed to the rare flowers and treasures in Celeste's courtyard, Mother surveyed my residence, plain except for a large lotus pond, and angrily demanded, "Why is Evelyn's residence furnished so simply? Are you servants taking advantage of my daughter's illness to mistreat her?" Rose, Lily, Sophie, and Grace all knelt together, crying out their innocence, saying the courtyard's arrangement followed my own wishes. Mother, knowing Rose was closest to me, called her forward to explain. Rose wiped away tears and, taking a deep breath, began in a pitiful tone. "All these years, Miss has managed the household accounts, knowing the family's savings were meager. There were often times when monthly allowances couldn't be met. To ensure Master and Madam could eat and drink well, and not to shortchange the young masters and young Miss allocated almost all of her own portion to supplement the various courtyards in the residence." Rose continued, choking back a sob, her voice growing more sorrowful. "Last winter, to ensure young Miss could use the warmest silver thread charcoal, Miss didn't allocate any charcoal for her own room, leaving it only for us servants. She herself endured the entire bitter winter without fire. By early spring, her health began deteriorating, and now, stimulated by young Miss and Master Edmund's affair, she can no longer bear it at all." Rose was spinning tales outside while I listened from within, gradually frowning. She was exaggerating too much. I was starting to pity myself. After all, I was quite cold-resistant, and the capital's winters weren't particularly harsh. Going without charcoal in winter was manageable. However, Mother was devastated, staggering back 3 steps as tears streamed down her face. How could this be? My child. Eleanor Mama, seeing Mother's emotional state was unsuitable for remaining there, waved away Lily, Sophie, Grace, and Ivy, then helped Mother return. No sooner had they left than the courtyard gates were shut tight. I sat up in bed, propping myself against quilts, and high-fived each of them in turn. Perhaps due to excessive guilt, Mother didn't come looking for me much after that. She had Eleanor Mama call doctors several times to examine me, and they all said I just needed proper care and rest. Gradually, she stopped paying much attention. But as the season moved into sweltering summer, the household faced many more expenses requiring her attention, such as monthly ice buckets and everyone's 2 new summer outfits each year. These were all major expenses. This time, Celeste showed understanding, proactively taking her hairpins and bracelets to pawn, bringing the money back to supplement household expenses. This action helped her regain Mother's favor. However, when Celeste went out, she inevitably faced sarcastic remarks from other noble ladies, especially her nemesis, who constantly watched Celeste, eager to publicize every sign of her decline throughout the city. When she returned home, she still had to dress plainly like a new widow, acting humble and ingratiating before parents and brothers. Parents were manageable, and Nathaniel usually treated Celeste decently. But since that incident, he no longer showed her a kind face. Celeste harbored resentment with nowhere to vent it. Just as Julian had recovered from his injuries and could move about his courtyard, she began plotting again. Celeste's current nemesis, Ophelia York, had once been her closest friend. That girl had treated Celeste with complete devotion, purely because she harbored romantic feelings for Celeste's brother Julian. Celeste had promised to help arrange this match between them, but she feared that once Ophelia achieved her heart's desire, she would no longer eagerly cater to her every whim. After all, having the daughter of the Minister of Revenue constantly seeking her approval and favor made this powerless Grand Preceptor's daughter quite prominent whenever she went out. Ophelia was deeply infatuated with Julian at the time, and, faced with Celeste's increasingly excessive demands, would grit her teeth and endure them. Until Celeste opened a letter Ophelia had entrusted her to deliver to Julian, reading it aloud behind artificial rocks while mocking it with her maids. Ophelia, who had anxiously left the banquet, overheard everything. Only then did she realize how Celeste had been toying with her. As a daughter of a prestigious family, being so manipulated naturally filled her with hatred for Celeste. From then on, Ophelia opposed Celeste at every turn, even willing to damage her own reputation to rally other noble ladies in the capital to ostracize Celeste. Though Celeste had several loyal followers, she couldn't withstand Ophelia's determined efforts to destroy her. When she returned home crying, she would rant in her courtyard. "She should look at what she is. How could she be worthy of my second brother? She's just a toad lusting after swan meat, then blaming me for it." Julian had protected her then, and seeing Celeste bullied by Ophelia's faction, he became increasingly cold toward Ophelia. This only deepened the feud between Ophelia and Celeste. If I were Miss Ophelia, spending my own money and effort running around in circles only to be treated poorly, I would have already put that person who tricked me in a sack with stones and sunk her in the pond, Sophie muttered quietly while pouring tea beside me. I glanced at her lightly and smiled a warning. Watch your words. Her indignation stemmed from what happened today while fetching ice buckets. She had encountered Celeste pestering Julian about her malicious plan. She had clung to Julian, acting cute and coy, wanting Julian to pretend to show interest in Ophelia, then publicly and humiliatingly reject her in a social setting. However, this time, Julian no longer unconditionally indulged Celeste as before. Faced with Celeste hugging his arm and acting spoiled, he merely glanced coldly and withdrew his arm from her embrace. Second young master doesn't seem willing to humor her anymore. But when he saw this servant, he actually spoke to me from a distance, Sophie said while recalling the incident. Strange, Grace said, holding a large broom while sweeping nearby. Second young master usually never looked kindly upon people from our courtyard. What could he possibly want to discuss with you? Sophie shot her a look. What are you thinking? Second young master came to ask me about Miss. Me? I stopped fanning myself in surprise. What did he ask about me? Sophie stepped back, stood straight and proper, and somewhat awkwardly imitated Julian's manner, asking formally, I heard elder sister is ill. How has she been these past days? At that point, Celeste became displeased, approaching with reddened eyes. Second brother, you ignored everything I just said to you, but now you only ask about sister. What are you doing? Nothing. Julian had glanced at Celeste casually, then looked straight ahead without regarding her further. Just discovering the difference between sweet words and genuine actions. Julian had truly reformed recently. Previously, he had relied on the family's status to constantly carouse with Celeste, cockfighting and dog racing, learning nothing useful. These past days, he had approached father about wanting to gain experience in the military, to earn some merit and bring honor to the Grand Preceptor's residence and father. If he had shown such intention before, father would have been delighted to immediately arrange everything and send him off. Unfortunately, now that the Grand Preceptor's residence had a poor reputation and father's political enemies were watching him closely, with Nathaniel having offended people outside, matters had become difficult. Father feared that one careless move might result in Julian being harmed by others outside. Using these concerns as justification, although Julian was eager for advancement, father kept him at home for an additional 6 months. After all, when ordinary officials' sons joined the military, they could only start from the bottom. If someone intended to target them, while they might not lose their lives in the military, incidents resulting in lost limbs and lifelong disability were not uncommon. Julian was quite dejected, staying locked in his own courtyard all day, showing signs of competing with me for the title of the residence's top shirker. As the weather grew increasingly hot, this year's bitter summer seemed unlike any in previous years, stifling to the point where one couldn't even stay indoors. My maids and I spent our days hiding under the tree shade by the courtyard pond, each sprawling in our own way, frantically fanning ourselves, nearly ready to open our mouths and pant to release heat. I heard there's drought in Yellow Province. The ponds that used to grow lotus roots have all dried up, and the earth has cracked more than 3 inches deep, Sophie said, hanging over the pavilion railing and dully sharing what she'd learned in the residence that day. It's unbearably hot here in the capital, too. I heard that the cellar wells used to store ice have dried up by more than half. Ice bucket prices outside have multiplied several times. Our residents probably won't be able to supply every courtyard, Rose said, wiping sweat from her wrist with a worried expression. Didn't they say Celeste pawned some jewelry to supplement the household? The accountant's books should have been balanced. Why does it still sound so financially strained? I paused my fanning, the fan half covering my face as I asked in surprise. Rose looked at me with complete exasperation, unwilling to engage with my performance. Sophie, however, didn't understand and pouted while explaining. Miss Celeste's jewelry was all bought for its craftsmanship. When actually pawned, few pieces could recoup their original cost. The money she brought back recently wasn't even half of what she spent buying them. Madam is inexperienced with accounts and poor at planning. That little money was spent almost immediately. She continued, puffing her cheeks and muttering, "If Madam had known what prices Miss Celeste paid for that jewelry, her eyeballs would have popped out." No sooner had she finished speaking than she received a tap on the head with a fan handle. Turning around, she saw Lily glaring at her. "You've grown bold, gossiping about the mistress while still living in this residence." Sophie's mouth drooped comically, making everyone laugh. I couldn't help reaching out to pinch her cheek and popping a lotus seed candy into her mouth. "Be patient a little longer. This year's difficult period is almost over. Since I no longer manage accounts, we're essentially wealthy now. The household affairs can be left for others to worry about." Days continued this way, with each day's sun growing more vicious. Prices in the capital had multiplied several times, leaving Mother frantically worried about balancing accounts daily. Ice buckets in various courtyards were gradually discontinued, with only Father's study still supplied. I heard that Mother seemed ready to give up several times, wanting to ask Father for money, but ultimately gritted her teeth and endured. She still remembered the days before Father's rise to prominence, when she was scolded by my stern grandmother for being incompetent with accounts, called a wastrel and money loser. Back then, Father, dutiful before grandmother, had joined in berating her for marrying a spendthrift woman. Mother had held back tears, while grandmother beat her with a broom handle, causing her to fall to the ground. Her peripheral vision caught sight of me standing confusedly nearby, her eyes filled with humiliation. Though grandmother had long since passed away, Mother still remembered this shame and remained unable to broach this topic with Father. But the sweltering weather wouldn't subside out of sympathy for this woman struggling with simple account books. After Celeste had pawned jewelry several times, when Mother asked again, she could only cry poverty. Finally pushed beyond endurance, Mother once again knocked on my courtyard gate. This time I received her quickly. Grace had just opened the gate when I appeared carrying a simple jewelry box, looking at Mother with eager eyes as I handed it to her. Mother didn't immediately reach out to accept it, instead letting her gaze sweep around my shabby courtyard, her expression already showing some guilt. Then her eyes fell on the jewelry box in my hands, one corner worn through, and she remained silent for quite some time before extending somewhat stiff arms to personally receive it. Eleanor, Mama beside her, also moved to take it, but Mother waved her away. As Mother prepared to leave, she looked at me with eyes containing many emotions, finally forming a tear at the corner of her aged eyes. She sighed deeply, as if trying to expel all the melancholy from her chest, but became even more sorrowful. She had recognized the jewelry, all pieces from 20 years ago. These were things Mother had discarded long ago. When I first came to the capital with my parents from remote Green Province, other families' daughters wore elaborate hairpins and colorfully embroidered dresses. When gathered together, they formed a brilliant cluster like celestial maidens. Meanwhile, I wore plain clothes and simple skirts, naturally standing out awkwardly among them. Though my cautious behavior prevented direct targeting, I was still young and loved beauty then, returning home with reddened eyes from feeling wronged. Seeing this, Mother had given me all her jewelry and comforted me, saying these agate and jade pearls were genuine articles that would suffice even if I wore them until marriage. Later, as Father's career progressed, household expenses became more comfortable. But Father ultimately had no backing in court and had reached the position of Grand Preceptor purely through his reputation for integrity and poverty, declaring loyalty to His Majesty. To maintain the appearance of clean governance, it was inappropriate to accumulate or display wealth. Mother and I continued dressing simply. At that time, I understood that the more poor and upright we appeared publicly, the more people would praise Father's character and clean reputation, making his position safer. Eventually, this became my habit. Even though Mother and my sisters now possessed many accessories befitting their status as noble ladies of the capital, I still didn't care for dressing up. In their eyes, my sister was beautiful and presentable, while I was utterly boring. Little did they know that those years of constant vigilance had left such deep memories that I couldn't forget the wariness etched into my bones. Even now, what sat on my dressing table was entirely the same batch Mother had given me years ago. The jewelry Mother had given me reflected the tastes of common people buying and selling goods in Green Province 20-odd years ago. Simple in style, but genuine in material, and substantial in value. Pawning the entire box would yield more silver than all of Celeste's previous sales combined. By the next morning, Lily opened the door to find 2 large ice buckets at my courtyard entrance. The servant delivering ice wiped his sweat and smiled at Lily. "Madam says that from now on, only Master's and eldest Mrs. Supplies will continue uninterrupted." I smiled, but before I could have the items returned, I heard commotion from the front hall. Upon Rose's investigation, it turned out Celeste was clinging to Theodore, who hadn't returned home in several months, crying about her grievances. Theodore was the eldest son of the family, born a year after me. By age, he should have been close to me, but his circumstances in the household were completely different from mine. Our parents had invested all their hopes in him, expecting him to inherit the family legacy, pursue scholarly pursuits, enter government service, and glorify the family name. When I still clutched Mother's old jewelry while enduring others' cold stares, Theodore already wore fine brocade clothes and black boots, used the capital's most precious writing materials, and studied under renowned court figures. Even earlier, when our family still lived in Green Province during hard times, I had to roll up my sleeves and pant legs to pick lotus roots from ponds with my cousins to extract fibers for ink paste. Detailed work that required day and night attention even after returning home. The rewards were substantial, though. 2 boxes produced annually and sold to capital nobility through merchants provided enough to support several family members for most of the year. Sometimes, when I returned home soaked halfway through my clothes, carrying lotus roots, I would encounter Theodore reading in the front courtyard. He would look at my ankles, still dotted with mud specks, with some disdain, making me feel awkward enough to shuffle backward on my heels. Though Theodore was my younger brother, with only a small age difference, he had only been close to me during early childhood. After learning to read and becoming sensible, he no longer spoke much with me, always appearing ashamed of me. In those days when our family lacked current power and prestige, and I didn't have so many younger siblings, Mother was still gentle with me. During cool summer evenings, she would hold me in her arms, stroking my back comfortingly. "Theodore is a man, different from you and us. Theodore must study and later become an official to support the entire family. He's very noble-minded and can't bear seeing any slovenliness in daily life. But Mother knows Evelyn does this for the family's sake." The new paper Theodore bought was actually earned by Evelyn's lotus root fiber extraction. Mother's gentle understanding comforted me, and I thought that once Theodore learned I had bought his books, paper, and writing brushes, he would naturally understand me as Mother did. I never considered that no one would ever tell Theodore such things. Because he was the eldest son, the future glory of the clan, he only needed to use ready-made paper and brushes to write policy essays without needing to know their origins. This is why Theodore and I, despite being the same age, had experienced completely different worlds. I often wondered, when Theodore wrote policy essays suggesting poor people sell household items to obtain substantial funds, what kind of benevolent, perfect world existed in his mind that allowed him to speak such naive words at 13 after 5 years of studying with teachers? I couldn't find an answer, only knowing that when he used brand new brushes bought with lotus root fiber ink paste money, while still despising me for going into muddy ponds to extract fibers, I stopped returning through the front gate to avoid that resounding sound of reading and its undisguised ambition. Later, when Celeste arrived, pampered from birth and possessing the unique, glamorous, proud air of capital noble ladies, Theodore preferred her even more. Whenever he returned from outings, he invariably brought gifts for Celeste. Celeste could obtain every fashionable item popular among capital women through Theodore. This time, Theodore brought Celeste a pair of 9-ring puzzles, playthings that had become popular in the capital over the past half-month. With the hot weather preventing polo matches, young nobles would gather to solve ring puzzles, quickly spreading this trend throughout aristocratic circles. Theodore bought this pair for Celeste, hoping his sister would smile prettily and, like other noble ladies, display her clever mind by solving several rings, creating a romantic story. He could then boast before his classmates. However, Celeste didn't even glance at them, just pitifully nestled in his embrace, crying. Theodore, always impeccably dressed, had several spots on his chest dampened by Celeste's tears. He instinctively frowned and called Celeste's maid Frost forward to explain the situation. Frost had perfectly learned her mistress's manipulative skills, describing only how the household had faced financial constraints recently, how Celeste had pawned her jewelry to support the family, yet Madame had cut off her ice bucket allowance and sent ice buckets to my courtyard instead. She mentioned nothing about why the household faced financial constraints or why I merited ice buckets in Mother's eyes. "These are small matters. Why be so upset? Come, see what elder brother brought you," Theodore said, assuming Celeste was throwing a tantrum over Mother cutting her ice buckets, thinking he could just have Mother restore them. His attention remained focused on showing Celeste his gift. Seeing Theodore had no intention of defending her, Celeste pouted and swallowed her grievance, forcing herself to half-heartedly play with Theodore for a while. But her mind was churning, truly lacking the patience to sit and solve ring puzzles. She claimed she would solve them later and send them to Theodore's courtyard, then left with Frost. Theodore was somewhat displeased by her dismissal, but let her go. Reportedly, Celeste smiled while bidding Theodore farewell, but her departing figure carried obvious resentment. After listening to this spectacle at my courtyard gate, I shared a knowing smile with the ice bucket delivery servant. Seeing how this is developing isn't good. Please trouble yourself to tell Mother that with my poor health, I have no need for these. Sister is young and energetic at an active age. These 2 ice buckets should be sent to the West Courtyard instead. Mother had intended to use 2 ice buckets to assuage her guilt, but I wasn't buying it. The servant delivering buckets came from Mother's courtyard and had just overheard Mother's most beloved Celeste complaining to Theodore about this matter, already showing difficulty. Hearing my refusal, he forgot even the customary polite insistence, immediately bowed and departed with the buckets. Rose and I were about to turn back and close the gate when I heard a voice behind us call, "Elder sister." It was Julian calling me. When I turned back, he had already approached and was bowing properly to me. Someone who never looked at me directly was now bowing with perfect form. I stared at him coldly for quite some time. Seeing his arms shaking from soreness, I made no move to help him rise. Julian stubbornly maintained his position. After a considerable while, I finally released the handkerchief I'd been clutching and covered my mouth, coughing a few times before speaking sternly. My health is poor, so I won't trouble second brother with formalities. With that, I returned to my courtyard, while Rose and Lily quickly worked together to close and lock the gate. I still remembered when Celeste had planned to have Edmund come personally to break our engagement and propose to her instead. Julian's voice had been among the loudest in agreement. During these days of shirking responsibilities, not seeing him in person was tolerable, allowing me to calmly listen to gossip. But now, seeing him face to face, I felt only hatred and the urge to slap him hard across the face. These years, Mother's reluctance to manage household affairs had kept me in the residence year after year until now. At 17, I had become a complete grown woman. The marriage arrangement with Edmund should have been completed this year. The Shaw family was wealthy and prestigious, a decent conclusion for someone like me who had been delayed to this age. Yet my own brothers and sisters had personally destroyed it in the most humiliating way possible. They weren't ignorant children. They understood perfectly well what awaited a woman my age whose engagement was broken, but they had followed their hatred and done it anyway, completely disregarding the care and affection I had shown them over the years. I despised Julian. Just as Julian had once preferred not to see me, I no longer wished to see him. Julian sensed this and called out across the high courtyard wall, his voice carrying panic and urgency. "Elder sister, recently I have been following your previous instructions to study diligently. Now when I encounter passages in books that I cannot understand, might I trouble elder sister to enlighten me as you did before?" Hearing this made my anger flare. I stopped walking toward the house and went to a corner where I found a blue stone brick, weighing it in my hand while estimating Julian's position beyond the high wall. Ivy and Scarlet quickly grabbed my arms from both sides to stop me. Finally, under their pleading expressions, I released the brick, covered my mouth, and coughed harshly several times. Rose immediately pressed against the courtyard front, screaming, "Miss! How are you coughing up blood again, miss? Please go lie down on your bed and rest, miss. The doctor said your condition requires quiet recuperation and cannot bear any disturbance, miss." The sounds outside quickly ceased and remained quiet for a long time. I lay down on the cool chair, still full of resentment. It wasn't until Grace returned from her morning shopping trip that she brought good news. "He's back! He's back!" the little maid said with bright, shining eyes. "What's back?" Nearby, Sophie asked. "Gabriel family's second son is back, and he brought a message from Gabriel's eldest son for Miss." After speaking, both little maids became excited, each blushing with shyness. The reason was simple. Gabriel family's second son, Raphael, was the capital's most romantic figure, becoming many young ladies' dream lover based on his appearance alone. Moreover, he was eloquent, gentle-eyed, and skilled in both literary and martial arts. Having met Grace today, her favoritism was obvious in her speech. Raphael, young master, Gabriel, eldest son. Thinking about it, I couldn't help but laugh, feeling Gabriel was quite unfortunate. Having such an outstanding younger brother, no wonder he complained yearly about being blocked from many romantic opportunities and having difficulty arranging marriage. He often lamented that young ladies who associated with him all harbored ulterior motives, coming with intentions of marrying his younger brother. While this was somewhat teasing, Gabriel himself was outstanding. He had inherited the Stone family business years ago and had successfully conducted several major deals, leading Stone family trading caravans between the capital and northwest regions. Though the Stone family were merchants, they had become among the capital's wealthiest. Gabriel had grand ambitions, spending most of each year traveling between the capital and northwest with trading caravans, staying home less than 2 months annually. Matchmakers would arrange meetings with young ladies, but before he could even meet them, he would already be traveling through northwest deserts with camels and goods. By his return, the young ladies had invariably married others. Gabriel didn't seem concerned, always joking self-deprecatingly. Heaven intends for Gabriel to earn more money. Not marrying saves considerable expenses. The little maids privately gossiped about his stinginess, but every time I entrusted Gabriel to sell ink paste in western regions, the substantial silver he earned always found its way back to me without shortfall. Through intermediaries, he had told me that the royal nobles of those western kingdoms were amazed by the fineness of my ink paste production. Some smaller countries even designated the few boxes of annual lotus root ink paste as royal exclusives. After all, ink paste requiring 200 days of work annually to produce just 2 boxes was naturally superior quality. With many people in my courtyard, the little maids would spend years with me tending the large lotus pond, extracting fibers and grinding paste. This explained how, despite father's modest government salary, I could barely support the entire household's needs while still saving enough to help arrange my brother's career paths. In western regions, Gabriel could trade dozens of ink paste boxes for many gold artifacts and agates. Upon returning to the capital, he would immediately display them in Stone family shops, selling at the most profitable prices before having the proceeds delivered to me. His reliability and trustworthiness spoke volumes about his character. Now he had asked Raphael to bring me word that though his caravan wouldn't return to the capital for half a month, knowing I was ill and likely needed funds for various expenses, he had Raphael bring my share of profits back early. Raphael would visit tomorrow after tallying accounts at home to deliver the silver, with Stone family essentially purchasing those precious artifacts in advance. Finally, he asked through Raphael whether, given my serious illness, he might be permitted to visit when he returned. I smiled, thinking that over the years, when I entrusted Gabriel with sales, transactions often passed through several hands. Knowing I feared my household siblings might become even more profligate if they learned of my income source, he had always helped conceal this very well. Gabriel and I had rarely even met face to face, and I questioned whether our relationship was deep enough for such concern. Gabriel's inquiry was difficult to interpret as anything other than romantic interest. Raphael was considerate, knowing the Stone family had no obvious connection with me, making sudden visits inappropriate. He first sent a note requesting a meeting at the Stone family's restaurant. Since he was bringing me money, I should certainly be welcoming. Unfortunately, my current condition prevented leaving home. Dozens of eyes in the residence watched me closely, waiting for any sign of recovery to dump this household's messy affairs back in my lap. I sent Grace to reply, saying I'd heard Western regions had many practical medicinal herbs and wanted to purchase some reasonably priced ones for health cultivation. That afternoon, Raphael visited with gifts. Passing by the pond on my way to greet him, I encountered Nathaniel arguing with Mother. He said, "When eldest brother was sent to study under Chancellor Sterling, it cost 5,000 taels immediately. Mother was generous with him then. Now you begrudge spending on me?" His expression was gloomy. Seeing Mother's silence, he grew increasingly dissatisfied, stepping closer aggressively. "I heard even second brother, useless and reckless as he is, has had arrangements made by Mother, ready to leave home in 6 months. Mother claims there's no money. Where did that money come from?" I felt this was unjust to her. Julian's arrangements had been Father's doing entirely, as I'd heard before. Mother truly lacked such capability. Currently, Mother could only look at Nathaniel speechlessly, tears flowing, her demeanor increasingly dejected. Father was rarely home now, and when he did return, he would stay briefly before leaving again. Mother's hope of even speaking with Father had become a luxury, let alone requesting help with Nathaniel's future. Seeing this was inappropriate for interruption, I led Rose around them to the front courtyard to receive guests. Raphael was indeed handsome. Sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, upright bearing, his blue robe enhancing his elegant, refined demeanor. When he bowed to greet me, his composed grace was quite appealing. "Miss Evelyn, my elder brother asked me to send his regards. Hearing of your illness, he specifically had me bring some precious Western medicinal herbs," he said, presenting an exquisite small box with a voice as smooth as jade. I accepted the box, finding several herbs I'd never seen before, with delicate, pleasant fragrances. "Thank you for Master Gabriel's thoughtfulness. These medicines must be quite valuable." "Just common items. Miss needn't be courteous," Raphael smiled. "Elder brother also said Mrs. Lotus Root ink paste is highly praised in Western regions, with quite profitable returns this time." He produced a heavy silver box. "These are the proceeds. Please examine them, miss." Opening it revealed 50 neat taels of silver, nearly double previous year's amounts. I felt genuinely pleased. This would finally secure my courtyard's expenses. "Additionally," Raphael paused, "elder brother wishes to ask whether Miss would consider expanding ink paste production scale. Western demand is substantial, and if Miss is interested, elder brother would gladly provide full assistance." This proposition intrigued me. I had always operated on a small scale, but expanding could bring more income and true independence. "I must carefully consider this matter. Please convey my gratitude to your elder brother," I replied politely. Raphael nodded, exchanged a few more pleasantries, then took his leave. As I escorted him to the gate, I encountered Theodore returning from outside. Seeing me actually receiving guests, Theodore frowned. "How is elder sister here? Wasn't your health poor, confining you to bed?" I smiled faintly. One cannot lie down constantly. Occasional movement is necessary. Theodore's gaze lingered on my face momentarily, seeming to want to speak, but ultimately just nodded before entering the residence. That evening, Rose reported that Theodore had visited Mother, and they had talked privately for a long time. I suspected they were likely discussing Nathaniel's situation. Sure enough, the next day, Theodore personally sought out Nathaniel, and the brothers talked in the courtyard for most of the day. Theodore reportedly agreed to use his connections to secure Nathaniel a position. However, this came at considerable cost. Theodore would need to owe Chancellor Sterling's family a substantial favor. Nathaniel was naturally extremely grateful, and his attitude toward Theodore completely changed, no longer as rebellious as before. Seeing her brother's relationship improve, Celeste felt somewhat uncomfortable. Her position in the household had become somewhat awkward recently. Though Mother still loved her, after several incidents, she was no longer as indulgent as before. Julian had also grown distant since his beating, and now even Nathaniel had aligned with Theodore, leaving her somewhat isolated in the residence. But she quickly found new support. Edmund's visits had increased significantly, each time bringing Celeste various precious gifts. Though Shaw family's old lady had reservations about this marriage, she ultimately relented under Edmund's persistence. Both families formally set the wedding date for this autumn. Upon hearing this news, I was in the courtyard with Rose and Lily picking lotus flowers. The pond's lotus blooms were in full glory, pink and white intermixed, fragrantly perfuming the air. Miss, the Shaw family has presented formal betrothal gifts. Madam asks whether Miss wishes to see them, said Eleanor Mama, Mother's personal attendant, who had come to deliver the message. I paused in my flower picking, then continued. My health is poor, so I won't join the festivities. Please congratulate my sister for me. Eleanor Mama hesitated. Madam also said Mrs. marriage arrangements should be prioritized. My affairs don't require Mother's concern. I have my own plans, I replied coolly. Seeing my firm attitude, Eleanor Mama dared not say more, curtsied, and withdrew. Rose beside me fumed indignantly. That Shaw family is really something. Look at what they said then and what they're doing now. Forget it, I waved dismissively. Everyone has their own fate. Forcing things is useless. Though I spoke thus, my heart inevitably felt complex. After all, I had once looked forward to this marriage. Watching it become someone else's happiness felt anything but indifferent. However, these emotions were soon dispelled by news. Gabriel had returned to the capital with a surprising proposition. Miss Evelyn, elder brother wishes to invite Miss to partner in business. Raphael visited again, this time particularly serious. Not just ink paste, but other trade goods as well. Elder brother says that with Miss's vision and capabilities, you could certainly achieve great success. This proposition stirred my heart. Over the years, though I had consistently made ink paste, the scale remained limited. Partnering with the Stone family would bring not only more income, but more importantly, true independence. This is a significant matter. Allow me a few days to consider. I didn't immediately agree. Raphael nodded. Elder brother said he would respect whatever Miss decides. He simply feels that someone like Miss shouldn't be confined to the inner quarters. These words warmed my heart. In this era of male supremacy, having someone value women's talent so highly was truly rare. That night, I tossed and turned, contemplating this proposition. Claiming disinterest would be false, but I also worried what impact acceptance might bring to the family. My doubts were answered the next morning. Theodore suddenly appeared in my courtyard, looking grave. Elder sister, I heard you've been associating with the Stone family. My heart tightened, though my expression remained unchanged. Is there some problem? Though the Stone family is wealthy, they are merchants by birth. As the eldest, legitimate daughter of the Grand Preceptor's residence, associating too closely with them might be inappropriate, Theodore said, frowning. I laughed coldly. Inappropriate? Then what would be appropriate? Continue being a useless ornament in the residence, or steal someone else's betrothed like my sister? Theodore flushed with embarrassment. Why must elder sister be so harsh? I'm merely concerned about damaging the residence's reputation. Reputation? I interrupted him. This family's reputation has been nearly destroyed by all of you. Is it my turn to ruin it now? Theodore wanted to argue, but found himself speechless. After all, recent events had indeed severely damaged the Grand Preceptor's residence's reputation. Moreover, I continued, my interactions with the Stone family aren't personal. They're legitimate business relationships. Does elder brother find women conducting business improper? Theodore remained silent for a long time, finally sighing. If elder sister is determined, I cannot say much more. I only hope elder sister will think carefully before acting. After speaking, he turned to leave. Watching his retreating figure stirred mixed emotions in my heart. That afternoon, Nathaniel also came to my courtyard, but his attitude completely differed from Theodore's. Elder sister, I heard you're cooperating with the Stone family. His eyes sparkled with excitement. They're among the capital's wealthiest merchants. Elder sister is truly impressive. I was surprised by his reaction. Don't you think it's inappropriate? What's inappropriate? Nathaniel waved dismissively. In today's world, having silver is what matters. Elder sister having such opportunities is wonderful. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Elder sister, if the business succeeds, could you perhaps include me? I've made some connections in court these days. Perhaps I could help. Looking at his expectant eyes, my heart softened. After all, we were siblings from the same mother. Despite previous conflicts, blood ties remained. This matter isn't settled yet, but if there's truly an opportunity, I naturally won't forget you, I said coolly. Nathaniel was delighted, thanking me repeatedly before leaving. That evening, Julian also came, standing outside my gate for a long time before finally knocking. Elder sister, his voice was somewhat choked. I know I've done many wrong things before, and apologizing now is too late, but I truly know I was wrong. I watched him through the door crack, seeing his reddened eyes. He was genuinely remorseful. If elder sister intends to do business, I'm willing to give everything in support, he continued. As long as elder sister can forgive me, I'll do anything. I remained silent for a long time, but ultimately didn't open the door. Some injuries, once inflicted, are difficult to heal. On the third day, I gave Raphael my answer. I agreed to cooperate with Gabriel. However, I have one condition, I told Raphael. I want to meet your elder brother and discuss this matter face to face. Raphael nodded. Naturally, elder brother has the same intention. He returns to the residence tomorrow and can arrange a meeting the day after. Finally, meeting this mysterious partner filled me with both anticipation and nervousness. 2 days later, I arrived at the Stone family restaurant as arranged. This was among the capital's most luxurious establishments, elegantly decorated and frequented by the wealthy and noble. Raphael personally welcomed me, leading me to a private room on the second floor. Elder brother is already waiting inside, he said. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. In the room, a man in a deep blue robe stood with his back to me at the window. Hearing footsteps, he slowly turned around. At that moment, I involuntarily held my breath. Gabriel was younger than I'd imagined, appearing only 23 or 24 years old. With sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, distinct features, he radiated calm confidence. Most striking were his eyes, deep, bright, seemingly able to see through one's heart. Miss Evelyn, I've long admired your reputation, he said with a slight smile, his voice deep and magnetic. Master Gabriel is too kind, I steadied myself and curtsied in return. Gabriel gestured for me to sit and personally poured tea for me. I heard from Raphael that Miss has considered clearly. Yes, but I'd like to understand the specific cooperation methods first. I spoke frankly. Gabriel nodded approvingly. Straightforward. I like dealing with intelligent people. He then detailed the cooperation plan. He didn't just want my ink paste, but valued my business acumen more. Through years of ink paste trading, he had discovered my accurate market judgment and reliable character. I have stable trade routes in Western regions, but lack a reliable partner to handle capital affairs, Gabriel said. If Miss is willing, we could establish a trading house and operate jointly. This proposition was even bolder than I'd expected. In this era, women participating in commerce was already rare, let alone establishing trading houses. Doesn't Master Gabriel worry about public opinion? I asked tentatively. Gabriel laughed heartily. I, Gabriel Stone, do what I wish, regardless of others' opinions. Moreover, in business, only capability matters. I've witnessed Miss's abilities. His words carried authority that shook my heart. Then how would we divide responsibilities? I asked. 50-50 split, equal shares for both of us, Gabriel said without hesitation. Miss handles capital affairs, I manage Western trade routes. Profits are shared, as are losses. These terms were far more generous than I'd expected. In typical partnerships, women usually received at most 30%. Master Gabriel's trust is overwhelming, I said sincerely. Not trust, belief, Gabriel's expression was particularly serious. I believe in Mrs. capabilities and that we can achieve great success together. At that moment, I suddenly understood what mutual recognition meant. This man truly regarded me as an equal partner, extremely rare in today's world. Very well, I agree. I stood up solemnly. Gabriel also rose, extending his hand. Then let's cooperate successfully. I grasped his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm. Successful cooperation. Leaving the restaurant, I felt exceptionally relaxed. Finally, I had the opportunity to step beyond the Grand Preceptor's residence walls and carve out my own territory. Returning to the residence, I first went to see Mother. Mother, your daughter has something to discuss. I sat before her. Mother set down her account book and looked at me. What matter? Your daughter wishes to engage in external business, I said directly. Mother froze. Business? Evelyn, what nonsense are you speaking? Your daughter isn't speaking nonsense, I said seriously. I've already arranged with the Stone family to establish a trading house. Ridiculous! Mother stood up excitedly. How can our Grand Preceptor's residence daughter show her face publicly doing business? We'd be laughed to death. I had expected this reaction. Mother, your daughter is already ruined. What reputation remains? Rather than being a useless ornament in the residence, better to venture out and perhaps earn back some dignity. Mother was left speechless. Indeed, after recent events, my reputation in the capital was already quite poor. Furthermore, I continued, if your daughter can earn silver, it would help relieve the residence's burdens. With current financial constraints, additional income is always beneficial. This struck Mother's heart. These days, she'd worried herself gray over household expenses. But Mother still hesitated. Mother needn't worry. Your daughter won't do anything to disgrace the family. I'll only engage in legitimate trade, and most of the time I'll remain in the residence, not constantly showing myself publicly. Mother pondered for a long time, finally sighing. Very well, since you're determined, I won't obstruct you. Just be cautious in all things. Don't be reckless. With Mother's consent, subsequent matters proceeded smoothly. Though Father was somewhat displeased, seeing my firm attitude, he tacitly approved. Theodore still opposed, but I no longer cared about his opinion. Nathaniel and Julian were quite supportive, both expressing willingness to help. A month later, Reed and Stone Trading House officially opened. The trading house occupied a residence in the city's eastern district, convenient for business yet relatively private. On opening day, Gabriel personally came to celebrate, bringing a cartload of precious Western goods. "Evelyn, here's to our prosperous business." He raised his wine cup. Prosperous business, I also raised my cup, clinking it gently with his. Thus began my new life. 3 years later. Spring sunlight streamed through window lattices onto account books. I set down my brush, satisfyingly reviewing the quarter's profits. In just 3 years, Reed and Stone Trading House had become a renowned establishment in the capital, our goods not only popular locally, but distributed to Jiangnan and northern frontiers. "Miss, Master Gabriel has arrived," Rose announced outside. I tidied my dress and rose to greet him. Over 3 years, Gabriel and my cooperation had grown increasingly harmonious, and special feelings had developed between us. Gabriel entered smiling, carrying an exquisite box. "What good things have you brought now?" I asked with a smile. "New spices from western regions. Thought you'd like them." He handed me the box. Opening it revealed spices I'd never seen with elegant, pleasant fragrances. "Thank you." I placed the box on the table. "Tea is prepared. Let's discuss next month's goods arrangements." But Gabriel didn't sit down, instead standing in place looking at me. "Evelyn, there's something I want to tell you." I looked up at him, noticing his unusual nervousness. Quite rare. "What is it?" Gabriel took a deep breath. "I want to propose marriage to you." I was stunned. Though we'd developed mutual affection over these 3 years, his sudden proposal caught me off guard. "You—" I momentarily didn't know what to say. "I know this might seem sudden," Gabriel continued, "but I've thought about this for a long time. These 3 years, your talent and character have deeply impressed me. I don't just need a business partner, I want a life companion." His sincere, moving words stirred warmth in my heart, but I hesitated. "I'm no longer pure with my past events." "Let the past remain past," Gabriel interrupted. "I want your present and future, not your past." He stepped closer, gazing intently at me. "Evelyn, marry me. Let's see the wider world together and create our own future." Looking at his sincere eyes, my final defenses crumbled. "Yes," I said softly. Gabriel was overjoyed, pulling me into his embrace. "Evelyn, you won't regret this. I swear." Leaning against him, I felt unprecedented security. This man truly understood my worth and was willing to walk alongside me. 6 months later, our wedding was held at the Stone family residence. The ceremony was simple, but attended by those who genuinely wished us well. Nathaniel and Julian both came, along with trading house partners. Everyone was happy. Most surprising was Theodore's attendance. He approached me somewhat awkwardly. "Elder sister, I'm sorry for my past wrongs. Congratulations on your marriage." I nodded. "Past matters are forgotten. I'm glad you came to my wedding." Our parents didn't attend, feeling my marrying a merchant disgraced the family. This didn't bother me. I no longer needed their approval. Celeste also didn't come. Reportedly, she had married Edmund, but they weren't living well in the Shaw household. Shaw's grandmother had never approved of her, frequently causing her distress. But these were her chosen paths. I couldn't help much. After the ceremony, Gabriel brought me to our new home, specially prepared for me, elegantly decorated with warmth throughout. "Do you like it?" he asked. Very much, I replied sincerely. Gabriel gently caressed my face. Evelyn, from now on, you're my wife. I'll spend my life loving and protecting you. I'll love you well too, I responded. That night, we truly became husband and wife. From the Reed residence's difficulties to current happiness, I had traveled a long road. But I regretted no choice, because these experiences made me who I am today. Life is thus: valleys lead to peaks, disappointment leads to hope. What's important is never abandoning the pursuit of a beautiful life. Our story continues, with more excitement awaiting our creation. Years later, when I became the capital's most influential female merchant, people still asked, "Why did you choose this path?" I always smiled in response, because the life I wanted could only be obtained through my own efforts. The Grand Preceptor's residence gave me birth, but not freedom. Edmund gave me betrothal, but not respect. Only Gabriel gave me equality and true love. And I finally became the person I wanted to be. From Reed Residence's daughter to Stone family's wife, from melancholy to high spirits, this was my path of rebirth, Evelyn's journey. That's our story for today. We hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this. And don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here with us. See you next time.